Okay, today's cardinal lesson is talking about the high deductible Plan G versus the regular Plan G, which is the most popular Medicare supplement going, that it pays the most benefits. And so when you're studying all this stuff of Medicare, and as we're getting ready to do a video, and you're studying, it's all over the place. I mean, you've got 10 different Medicare supplement or Medigap policies, A, B, C, D, G, N, and then, now we're throwing in another one. And then you've got the parts of Medicare like Part A and Part B, and people try to wrap their arms around it. And I can't say that I blame you. You look through the booklets and you try to get an understanding of the stuff, and a lot of folks just end up very confused. And my other videos, and specifically the one about Medicare for people turning 65 that's on YouTube, has had like over 160,000 views in just a matter of months, which is pretty flattering. And this gets down pretty specific and granular. That video, what it's designed to do is give you an overview of all the parts of Medicare and all your options that you could, and it brings you down to some decisions. This video is assuming that you've chosen original Medicare. So you've decided not to go the Medicare Advantage route, not to go the outsourced route, and you've decided to stay on original Medicare, Parts A and Part B. In other words, you're going to get your health insurance directly from the government through Medicare. Okay? And then it's going to progress to show you what you would have or what you'd be out of pocket if you relied only on Medicare. Then it's going to show you what a Plan G by itself is going to pay, which is the best Medigap plan, pays the highest benefits. And then it's going to show you what a high deductible Plan G is going to do for you, and specifically why you might want one, and it's really all about the cost of the thing. So let's just look at original Medicare, Part A and Part B. And this is just for the assumption for a minute. People that are on Medicare, they have Part A, they have Part B, and they don't have any other supplemental insurance. They're not on Medicare Advantage. What liabilities are you facing? What is the risk? Because before you get ready to buy a supplement, the supplement is going to pay what you'd be out of pocket. So let's understand this as though you had no supplement. So if you go in the hospital for your first 60 days in the hospital, you've got a deductible of $1,484. That's in 2021. So if you went in there for 3 days or 2 days and checked out, for your entire hospital bill, you would owe $1,484. Now, if you were still in there after 60 days, which is very few people anymore in the hospital to stay that long, but when they do, from the 60th first to the 90th day, you have an out-of-pocket of $371 a day. So, if you were in there 70 days or you had 10 days past the 60th, that's $371 a day. That's $3,700 that you'd have in addition to your deductible, and so on and so forth. And after 150 days in the hospital, Medicare stops. Medicare just doesn't have any more benefits. Now, if we go over to the Plan G, the Plan G is going to pay all of these costs in red. I mean, you could go into the hospital several times in a year and incur this deductible more than once. Each time you incur it, the Plan G is going to pay that $1,484. It's going to pay the $371 a day. It's going to pay the $742 a day. And if you ran out of benefits at 150 days, it's also going to pick up all your costs beyond 150 days for up to an additional year. That's played by the Plan G Medigap policy from the insurance company. Then you get to skilled nursing, and another word for that is rehab. So it's where you don't stay in the hospital as long as you used to. You're in there for 4 days, 7 days, 10 days, and then instead of going home, you go to rehab. which is kind of like a hospital. You have to be receiving skilled care. So that doesn't mean that every time you go from the hospital to the skilled care, nursing home, rehab, that Medicare is going to pay for it. So, but if they do, and if it's qualified as skilled, your first 20 days in the skilled nursing facility, you're out of pocket with Medicare is zero. I mean, you don't owe any. Medicare picks up the whole tab. When you get to the 21st day, you have a daily deductible of $185.50. And then after 100 days, which very few people get certified by Medicare longer than 100 days, but if you did, and when that happens, if you were one of those people, from days 101 plus, Medicare pays nothing in the skilled nursing rehab. The Medicare supplement is going to pick it up just like Medicare did. And they're going to do that for several months after that. So when it comes to hospital costs and skilled nursing, if you have a Plan G Medigap plan, between Medicare and the Plan G, you're going to owe nothing for hospital and skilled nursing. So that's a nice thing. You don't have any deductibles, any co-payments. For Part B medical expenses, this is where your real liability is if you don't have insurance. And so every year under Part B, you have an annual deductible, which in 2001 is $203. So that means your first $203 at the doctor's visits, x-rays, outpatient stuff, first $203 is on you. Then after that, Medicare pays 80%, and it leaves you with 20% of all charges, the 80-20 deal. But there's no cap on year 20. So with a lot of private insurance, you've got to top into the 20%, is after you've paid so much out of your pocket, then it becomes 100%. No such thing under Medicare. If you just had Medicare by itself, that 20% is open-ended. And this is where people really get stuck if they don't have supplemental insurance. And then there's this thing called excess charges, which a lot of folks don't really talk about. And that's from a doctor who accepts Medicare. They take Medicare. They'll bill Medicare and accept it, but they don't agree to accept assignment. In other words, they balance bill you. They charge more, and they reserve the right to charge more than the Medicare allows. You don't get anything from Medicare for amounts that are balance billed. Okay, your supplement or your Plan G plan, the Plan G is not going to pay that $203 deductible every year. That's going to be on you. You get zero benefit out of that. But that's the only benefit of the covered Part A and Part B stuff that you're going to have out of pocket. Because after that, they're going to pay the 20%, and the Plan G also pays excess charges. It's going to pay for, like the example of the doctor that takes Medicare but doesn't accept assignment. Maybe they charge you $10,000 and Medicare only approves like $9,000, and then they pay 80% of it. Supplement pays 20%. This excess charge would pay the additional $1,000. So, and then in foreign travel, when you're out of the United States, Medicare pays nothing. The Plan G also has a foreign travel emergency benefit attached to it, so you could get some benefits out of your supplement if you're traveling abroad and you had some emergency. So the Plan G is the most comprehensive plan, pays the highest benefits, and really you're out of pocket annually for Part A and Part B, non-covered Medicare stuff or non-paid Medicare stuff. The only thing you're going to be responsible for out of pocket is the $203, plus obviously the premium for the Plan G. So we had a listener and a viewer on YouTube write in and say, could you tell me something about the high deductible Plan G? I'd like to learn about that. And so that was really the source that created this video. And so a Plan G high deductible is nothing more than the same Plan G, but you get nothing out of the policy each year till you pay out $2,370 out of your pocket that would have been covered by the Plan G. So that's the extra deductible on the Plan G. So in other words, you got to incur that in a hospital deductible, or the 20% is all these benefits are not going to come to you till they add up to $2,370. And then once you've paid this much out of your pocket, and that'll be added to the $203, now it's going to act just like a regular Plan G. So you're just putting a $2,370. The government doesn't make anything easy. I mean, why they couldn't make that $2,500 or something, but it's $2,370. So that's the only difference, is you're taking on that deductible, and then the premium is obviously very different. So what I've done is I've given you a couple of examples. We're in all 50 states and the District of Columbia, so we can serve you if you want consulting on this stuff anywhere in the United States. I've given you an example in North Carolina, which is our home state. We're here in Durham, North Carolina. And then in addition, I've shown Florida, and it's really South Florida where the premiums are the most expensive, to show kind of the high end, just for a couple of examples. And so in North Carolina, a Mutual of Omaha Plan G, the regular Plan G for a 65-year-old female, is going to be $1,127 a year, a little over $90 a month. The high deductible Plan G is $367. So in other words, by taking on this much liability yourself, you're going to save about $700 to $800 in premium every year. So you could do the math, and you could say, well, in 3 to 4 years, if I don't incur a lot of expenses, I'm going to about break even. So if you go to the next company, North Carolina United American, they charge for a Plan G in North Carolina $2,256 for a 65-year-old female. And you look at that, that's almost double for the exact same coverage. So if I'm buying regular Plan G in North Carolina, I'm buying it from Mutual of Omaha, not from them. Okay? But if we go over here and we say, I'm going to go with the high deductible Plan G, well then they're actually just a few dollars less expensive, but the difference here is really not a good comparison. It's more like the difference here, which is about the same. Now, if we go down to Florida, okay, and in Florida, we've got, in South Florida, 65-year-old female, it's almost $3,000 a year for the same Plan G that you can buy in North Carolina for $1,127. Now we're taking a look at this and we're saying, that's a pretty good chunk of change. And I can get the high deductible Plan G for $1,139. So that's about $1,800 difference. But, if I'm your agent, I'm not going to sell you Mutual of Omaha high deductible Plan G. I'm going to sell you United American high deductible Plan G, because that's $732 a year. And if you compare that to the premium there, you're saving about $2,300 in premium by adding a $2,300 deductible. So it's almost like you can't lose. Is that if you have a healthy year or a reasonably healthy year, and the most you're going to be paying out of pocket is this $2,370, plus of course the $203. Now this doesn't include drugs and dental and all that kind of stuff. This is just looking at basic hospital and medical, which is what most people are looking at when they're looking at a Medicare supplement. So to a degree, why does all this stuff matter? Why am I going into this detail? Well, to put together summary is this is Medicare Naked, okay? And not too many people do that. We run into them occasionally, people that don't buy supplementary insurance, they don't go to a Medicare Advantage plan, they just have Medicare, and they'll just say, I'll pay these deductibles. They end up with some pretty serious bills when they get sick. Now, the next spot is, okay, so now we're going to go to the best or highest benefit supplement, Plan G, and this is filling in all your gaps, and then this is what you're going to pay at 65. It'll obviously be more at 75 or 80. So there's a whole bunch of other options besides Plan G, but most of the time we're going to put people here. We can do that a lot because we got about 40 companies to offer them. So we're going to find somebody that has a reasonable rate on the best plan. So this shows you how well that Medicare supplement goes in and works with Medicare itself. And then the next step, which is what the video is about, is the Plan G high deductible, which the only difference is a deductible somewhere between $2,000 and $2,500, and then you have a much lower premium. So those of you that want to self-insure the front end of your coverage, this is something you want to check out. So I thank you very much for listening. I'm Hans Scheil, and we'll talk to you again.